What is going on? Out here working on a little Beetle. So it's about 4 weeks after the surgery now. Maybe 5, I don't know. Got the stitches out. Everything's healing up good. And a lot of people parachuting today over at the parachute place. So if you hear a lot of planes, that's what that is. This is a motor that I built right before the YouTube garage party that Greg put on. I want to say 2015, maybe 14. But this one gave me a real rough time. This is an aftermarket case that looks like a Volkswagen case. I think it's made by Mafoko. Its motor was built by Mafoko originally, and it failed. They sent it back and had it warranty, and it failed again. And it still ran, but it just didn't run good. And I got a hold of it, and the guides were loose in the head, so I took the heads off and put a set of German heads on there and rebuilt the motor, put new bearings in it, and had an oil pressure problem at an idle. The light would come on. I tried several different things, and I put booster springs in it. I got a 30mm pump in there, and normally if I put a 30mm pump, I never leave the strainer in the motor. I usually full flow it and put an aftermarket filter. And when I went to change the oil, I never got this back for the recheck. Generally 500 miles is the limit. You know, I like you to bring it back so I can make sure everything's tight and adjust the valves and make sure everything's happy. And change the oil, of course, because I used the break-in oil for the flat tappet cam. I used the Brad pen when I first build the motors now, so it breaks in. And then I changed the oil to a zinc oil for flat tappet cams. So it's good to get the break-in oil out at 500 miles and take a look at everything and just make sure everything's happy. So that's normally how I do it. I didn't get that option with this. It came back 2 years later. I remember really fighting this one. Everything was bad on this. It's got an aftermarket, well, it's a Solex carburetor now. There's another vacuum leak. I got to fix that. But anyway, this is a carburetor that I had laying around because they had an aftermarket carburetor on it. It was a 34 pick, but it was no name. Probably the same people that made the block. And just couldn't get it to run. I tried rebuilding it, and the idle circuit, there was something wrong with it. And I went through it a couple times. This is my carburetor off my bus, so I ended up putting that on there and bought a new one for my bus. Just donated it. Donated the wires. I think I threw in that 09 distributor because their distributor was bad. It was a case of everything was bad on the motor, and I was trying to get it done, and it was just a unicorn. Well, today when I went to pull the strainer plate off, I pulled the plate off, and no oil came out. It was like the plate was still on there, and it had sucked the screen up to the pickup tube. So as soon as you hit the gas, the light would go off on this. So I'm suspecting the screen's bad. I'm gonna not put the screen back in there, and if it solves the problem, then I'll pull the motor back out and full flow it and put a filter on it down the road. Screen's not much protection anyway on a Volkswagen. It's like window screen on your pool. So any particulates that are gonna damage the motor are gonna make it through that strainer that the factory provides. Some of the older cars, you know, if you don't change the oil a lot, it's a good idea to have that screen in there, because if you start changing the oil, it'll break the sludge loose, and the screen will pick up that stuff at least. But I've seen these suck up to the pickup tube a couple times with a 30mm pump now, so I'm going to take my own advice and not ever do that again. And yeah, so we're going to try to put some oil in here. I adjusted the valves. Everything looked pretty good. I also remember changing these valve covers out. These were brand new Volkswagen valve covers. It had some aluminums on there, leakers. So I took those off and put the new VW valve covers and bales on there. But that's what's going on with this. This is about done. I'm going to check the gear lube, make sure that's good. Adjust the rear brakes while it's up in the air. And we'll jack it up in the front. It's a Super Beetle, so there's not a lot of lubrication points up there, but we'll check it out, make sure everything looks good, adjust the front brakes. And I was going to take some steel wool to the bumpers for her, because these are fairly new. She had this restored not too long ago. These are the typical parts you get now. Either you don't wax them, you got to wax these constantly if you're going to leave the car outside. So little SOS pad will take some of this off. I'll throw some wax up there and slow that down for her. It's pretty much all the chrome that's been replaced on the car. This is what you see typically in Florida. You know, it's really hard. It's a harsh environment. These aren't going to clean up. They're already past the point of no return. But the bumpers might. So we'll try that. And I'm going to tighten the bumper. I tightened the back one up for them. So got that going. Got somebody to come and looking at the big white whale tomorrow. Trying to sell this. So I got to work on this tonight. Got to change the oil on it and do some service items. Get it down off the jacks. Put the slides in. And I was going to try to throw some wax on it, but Andrea said just to leave it. So I don't know. But yeah, I want to say thanks for all the well wishes you guys sent my way while I was in the hospital and getting my surgery, all that stuff. Let me find somewhere to set you guys down. There we go. I want to say thank you to Neil and Marcy. They sent me a card all the way from the UK. I appreciate that. And I got a get well card from Andrea's Uncle Joey in Atlanta. So thank you. Thank you for everybody that sent nice messages and stuff. Had some visitors in the last last week. Stefan from Belgium. They came into town, got to see him and his son. We hung out for about 7 hours together and just talked about Volkswagen engines, and they looked around the shop and looked at all the projects. And we went and took the Mustang out and played with it a little bit. Got a little issue with that with 5th gear, so I need to try to get the transmission warranted on it. And I've looked at a lot of the forums online, and a lot of people, say they put an aftermarket shifter in. Mine's already got an aftermarket shifter. So I'm gonna put the stock shifter back in and take it back and forward. It's had the check engine light on ever since I bought it. When I checked it, it's an airbag code. They were supposed to service the airbag. So we need to get that addressed, maybe get the tranny addressed, and then the consensus seems to be the clutch is just not up to snuff on those. It's a diaphragm type, and as you increase in the RPM, the diaphragm loses pressure, and you lose pedal as the RPM increases. So all the other gears are really good. As far as misshifts, don't have a lot of them. It just started grinding all of a sudden going into 5th gear. And I've looked online, and some of the dogs break off the gears, and the synchros wear on 5th gear sort of bad. And there's some service bulletins out on it. So hopefully we can get it resolved. If not, we might have to do something with that. If I sell the motorhome, I'd like to, I just don't know if I'm going to keep the Mustang. I like it and everything, but I don't know if I like it enough to invest the money in it to make it where it's dependable. Really needs a one-piece drive shaft and a Tremec transmission. The conversion they have, they say that pretty much makes it bulletproof, but I don't know, we'll see. We might try Chevrolet out or something like that. I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah, not a lot going on here. Just been trying to get out in the shop the last couple days. Had this lady bring the car by, so that got me moving around. Mike came down from Kansas. We had lunch, and Becky, some of you know her from the YouTube party. Her and her husband or boyfriend bought a house not too far from me, so we went and checked that out. Really nice garage, and yeah, I haven't been out in the garage for 4 or 5 weeks now, so I need to get some pegboard up and get all my new parts put somewhere, and get back out here and start working on some stuff. I was thinking about pulling the motor out of the drag car. I had a couple of people ask questions, and you get people back and forth, and they want to have their opinion on stuff and tell you that stuff's not possible. And I'm really not telling you how to do things there. I'm just showing you how I do them, and I have pretty good luck with stuff. And people have had pretty good luck that have followed the videos. I get comments all the time, first-time engine builders, and they seem to find the videos useful. There's a few people that don't, but recently I sort of had some people question the turbo car over here, And if you go to the channel page, I guess you just have to go to vwdarrin. There's a couple videos of the car running, well, it went at 1035, spinning the tires off the trailer, and then 1002 at 100 or 133. And that was in the summer race in the middle of the day on a Sunday. It was a fun day Sunday. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this motor out, clean the bench off. I got to get the shop sort of organized. I really need to get the floor pans back in the 64 first, but I want to pull this motor out and sort of document it for you guys. Say, you know, some guys that want to have a combination similar to that. You know, it's sort of a 6-flat combination in the 8th mile. It'll run 580s every once in a while on a good day, and it'll run 10 flat, high 9s in the quarter. I don't have a competition license or all the safety gear to go into the 9s, so I just keep it right about 10.0s. But it's a pretty basic motor, so we'll take that apart and we'll look at the deck height and the compression ratio and all that stuff, the camshaft and the copper head gaskets, and everything that I use as far as on my race motor. And that's a car that you can go check out the video and see how it runs. So a lot of times we just talk about stuff, but there's video to back that up. And if we pull the motor apart, I think it'll give people some perspective of it's not that complicated, you know. You just got to buy the right stuff the first time. So this has a good crank in it, but most of the stuff is from like 1990 or in the late 80s. And we'll check all that out. I think it'll be sort of fun. We'll freshen that up. I need to pull the tranny out and go through it and freshen it up. And the car is never backed up. You got to hold it in reverse, so I try not to back up. I don't do a big burnout or anything, so it's never been an issue. But apparently there's some machine process that got missed when we put the tranny together. I'm going to try to fix that. And that's about it. Still looking for some doors. If anybody local has any doors for a Beetle, I would really like to get 2 doors for the race car with windows that roll up and down. We're trying to put this back together so we can, you know, put it on the street a little bit, give people rides in it, and just enjoy the car a little more than having to put it on the trailer and go to the track. I just don't have the you sort of need a group of people to race a car, you know. It takes a village to raise a kid, and it takes a group of people to race a car. Especially a Volkswagen, as easy as it sounds, you know, as it would be, you know, you need a few people to make it happen. And I don't consistently have people that'll go to the track with me. My wife really isn't into it. My son hates Volkswagens. So the only option is a street car, and that way I can just jump in it, play with it. And I've sort of been inspired by watching Matt and the Old Speed channel over there. You know, they seem to enjoy their cars a lot more than I enjoy mine. They're just not much fun once you just park them in the garage and don't use them. So that's going to be the goal this year, is try to get, or whatever's left of the year. There's not a whole lot left, but I'd like to get some of this stuff running and driving again. This car, the camera's sitting on, the bodywork's just about done. I did come out and mess with this a little bit over the 4-week period, but it needs a good 20 hours or so more on it. And I got some feather fill or slick sand to spray on it, block it down really good. I need to get the Nova and some primer, and I got the transmission back in that before I went in the hospital. I need to get the drive shaft reinstalled, put the training fluid in there. I got all the lines and stuff hooked up, so we need to get that running again. And then I need to get on this Ventura. The Ventura I bought was supposed to be an in-and-out project, and it ended up getting parked in the Bermuda Triangle there, and not much happened over there. So I've been trying to get the stuff off the back of it, sort of get the car emptied out, and I want to get working on that, at least make it run. The tranny's rebuilt, everything's new on that, so it would be nice to be able to start it up at least and move them around the shop. I want to stop pushing cars around, so yeah. So that's what's going on around here, not a whole lot. Hans sold some of the stuff off of his car. He wasn't having any luck with the computer system, so he sold that to somebody that was more, well, they were in a better area for it. There's nobody that tunes Mega Squirt in our area, so he didn't have any support. other than, you know, the guy that makes the stuff. And he'd sent it back a couple times, and the fuel and the spark weren't just, something wasn't right, or the maps weren't right, or, you know, just didn't have the skill to make it all happen. It wasn't self-learning, so you have to plot a map for everything. And he really didn't want any help with it, so you couldn't help him make a map or any of that stuff. But he bought an LS motor, and he rebuilt that. He has that ready to go in the car. He's saving for a transmission. He bought a new computer system. I don't know what he bought, but apparently, hey Toes, you want to be in the video? But anyway, apparently the new computer system is much easier, and he doesn't have to tune it or make maps or anything, and it'll support the horsepower level that he wants to make. You know, the motor's overbuilt, but same thing, car's just sitting in the same spot. You know, he tries to tune it, doesn't get any enjoyment out of it, so he's at the point where he just sold all that stuff off, and he's going to try something a little more basic. But yeah, what's going on, Toes? You want to say hi? Anybody needs any cats? I got 4 of them that are spayed and neutered, and I got all their shots. So, been doing a new program with the animal control. They started giving us cages. Andrea took a class, and we catch them and take them down there, and they spay and neuter them and clip their ear and give them all their shots and release them back into the neighborhood. That way they stop breeding. We have a wooded area in the back, and they call them colonies, but there's probably about 15 of them, and you know, they've been making kittens for about 3 or 4 years now. We started with like, I think 3, if you've been with the channel very long. I moved here with 1 cat, and then I had 3, and then they started making cats, and it's just gotten out of hand. So gave 5 of them away last month, and like to give 5 away this month, and then we could thin it out. They're really good cats. Some of them are feral, and the feral ones we're not trying to give away. Any of the ones I'm trying to give away are really tame. So yeah, I think that's about it. I have to remember how to make videos again. Hopefully this one wasn't too bad, not too long. Try to get you guys caught up. Thanks again for all the well wishes on the video. I did have some guys send me some personal messages or message on videos about Volkswagen motors. One guy in particular was building a motor, and he had a question about camshafts, and I think he wanted to run a C45 with 1.4 rockers, and I think that would be okay. I don't know what cylinder heads you have, but you did mention that you had 48 IDAs. I don't know what RPM range you want to run in. A C45 is very similar to a K8, which is an Engel. WK, what is it? They have the FK series and the W series. And the FK series is for high lifts, which you'll find the K7, which I like to use with stock rockers a lot of times because of the profile on the cam. It's a little nicer than a 110, and it's about equivalent with stock rockers. And you can upgrade to the 1.4s at a later date. But the C45 with 1.4 rockers should be around right around 500, 520 lift, I think, maybe under there. I have a box over there, but I think it's for C35, and it says 388 at the cam. I don't think that's a C45. I think that's a C35. So you add 40. If you have a 1.4 rocker, you can figure 40 thousandths lift over whatever's at the cam. This cat's just going to insist to be in the video. But anyway, 1.4 rocker should be fine. Most of my street motors that are making, you know, 170, 200 horsepower are right around a 600 lift. You know, the one thing that you need to make sure of is you don't have coil bind. I use the CB heads, which have the 100 longer valve in them. So you get a lot more valve travel before you have coil bind. And also use the 650 valve spring package on the cylinder heads that we use on the 2110. You can go look at those videos. That's why I tell people CB Performance is a good source for cylinder heads. I know there's other cylinder head builders out there, Clyde Bird, Steve Thames, There's a couple guys that build cylinder heads. I'm aware of that. Jeff Dunham. But CB Performance is, you know, you buy it out of the box, bolt it on the card. It's pretty darn fast. And you don't have to pay that custom cylinder head price, because most custom cylinder head builders, you know, it can get pretty expensive, and sometimes you get something you don't need. And with CB Performance, you tell them what cam you're running, they pick the proper spring package. They'll make sure you got, you know, no coil buying, and they can just they're more equipped to set you up. They have a lot of options there. So that's why I like CB Performance for their cylinder heads. On an all-out race motor, you know, it would be a scat crank with some Potter rods, probably would be my preference. Street motor, you could get away with one of the CB kits, you know, if you're going to drag race it all the time or put a lot of boost to it. Then we'd probably go a different way. You know, an engine kit probably wouldn't be an option. But for an engine kit, I think CB Performance sort of has the market cornered. I always recommend checking the rear bearing alignment with the oil hole in the case if you're going to use an aluminum case. But other than that, I think that stuff's pretty decent. The compression ratio is set a little high, 10.5 to 1 on some of those motors. So if you live in an area where you can't get fuel, that's something to consider. But that's something that you can talk with them about, and they can, you know, lay it all out for you. Toes, I don't know what you want, man. Ugh. He wants to just be held. That's all he wants, some loving. But anyway, that's what's going on. Somebody asked me about Scat for engine kits. Scat does offer engine kits, and Scat is a full service machine center. They can pretty much machine anything you want. I love Scat parts. It stops at the cylinder heads because they just don't have anything available to make the high horsepower. So if you want to make big power, you're going to have to get a different kind of cylinder head. That would be your only option with Scat. You know, that's the only drawback. But as far as crankshafts, connecting rods, all that good stuff, I definitely prefer Scat for a drag racing application. All right, guys, I'm going to turn this off. The battery's going to die. Thanks again for all the well wishes. We'll be getting back on the videos. And tell Toes bye.